Making melodies is probably my favourite aspect of music production. The only trouble is, if I'm feeling the slightest bit uninspired, it quickly becomes my least favourite. Over the years, I've picked up a few tricks that have come in super useful when I'm not in the most creative of moods, and in this video, I'm going to be sharing them with you. Before we get into all the practical tricks, I'm going to quickly go over a few things that you can do outside of your DAW. The first would be listening to more music. This doesn't even need to be music from the genre you produce. In fact, I'd actually say that you should listen to more music from outside of your genre, and you'll actually be surprised what inspires you. It's also important to learn when to take a break. Sitting at your PC forcing out ideas when you're not inspired will just slowly but surely burn you out. I know that if I'm struggling to make something that I like, I begin getting frustrated and start clicking file new and starting over. As a producer, you want to feel the sense of achievement that you get from exporting beats, and not the sense of defeat that you get by giving up and abandoning them. So yeah, just listen to more music and take breaks when you're feeling uninspired. Now we'll get to some things that you can do inside of your DAW. Firstly, I'm going to talk about chords. Pretty much all of my music is built around a chord progression, and I'd say that it's one of the most important elements to get right. Luckily, in 2024, there are some great and affordable chord generator tools and plugins that can help us out. A recent FL Studio update added a chord generator right into the piano roll. This is still in its infancy, so I'd expect a few changes to the way that it works, but you can pick a preset down here and then decide whether to generate new progressions based on the current chords or something totally new with the random button. If you don't use FL Studio, then there's some sick plugins that can do the same thing and more. Cthulhu by X for Audio is really good but just a little dated, and this plugin has a really powerful ARP section too. Ripchord is a free alternative but has very little presets. But the real goat for this sort of thing would have to be Scalar. I actually copped Scalar a good few years ago because I had little to no music theory knowledge. These days I hardly open it, as it literally taught me all of the music theory stuff that I needed. Aside from generating chords, Scalar can detect the key of MIDI and audio, and it has the craziest rhythm and performance section that I've seen in any plugin. Just take a listen to some of these. If you prefer to stay away from these plugins and put your chords down manually, then I've got you too. The first trick here is literally rocket science, so make sure that you're paying attention. With your scale highlighting set to any natural minor scale, place down a triad on your root note. Underneath this, you then just want to layer your root note an octave down. Next, highlight this chord and copy it across until you've got 4 of them. Take the bottom note of your 3rd chord and drop it down by 4 semitones, and the bottom note of your 4th chord and bring it down by 5 semitones. What you'll be left with is a dark sounding progression that's a perfect starting point for drill or trap beats. If you want to be different, and you can start with the same chord and copy it across just once. On the 2nd chord, take the middle note and drop it down by 1 semitone, and you'll have this. Next, copy this again so you're left with 4 bars, and then copy once again to get 8. Now with the second half still highlighted, shift everything up by 5 semitones. I just like to take this top note and bring it back down so the chords stay nice and tight, and this keeps things suspenseful. Once you have your chords down, a great way to add depth to them is by using layering. Sounds like strings and pads work great here, and it's literally as easy as copying your chord progression onto a different patch. Rhythm is always important, so the next trick is going to focus on that. In a new patch, I've opened up this pluck sound. I've copied in my chord progression to use as a guide, and I've just shortened the notes a bit. Next, I'm going to hit play and move these notes around to create a bass for my counter melody. While it's playing, I'll also use my ear to pick any extra notes that I want to add in. The next tip is probably one that you've heard countless times, but you've got to keep everything organised. I have a default template in FL Studio that has all of the instrument and drum channels I could possibly need. Everything's already routed to the mixer, colour coded, and I have all of my bus and send tracks set up too. This just means that when I open FL Studio, I can get my ideas down without having to stop and route anything. There's a video on my channel showing exactly how I made the template, so I'll leave a card for that in the corner, as well as a link to the actual template in the description. With the rise of platforms like Splice and LoopCloud, producers now have access to a ridiculous amount of loops and samples. The next few tricks are going to be looking at how you can take these samples and mess around with them to make them a little more unique. The first method is actually quite simple, and it creates this sort of manual halftime effect. To do this, I'd first chop my melody into equal sections. Next, I'll go through and delete every second clip, which will leave me with a pattern that looks like this. Now with stretch audio clips selected, I can stretch each of these slices to fill all the gaps. This will leave me with an effect similar to that of halftime or gross beat. I bet there's been a time when you've been working with a WAV loop and wish that you could remove or separate an element. The last few years have seen a lot of advancements in stem separation capabilities, so luckily there are many programs, softwares and websites that are capable of doing it. With the introduction of FL Cloud, FL Studio now has stem separation built right into its software. The Serato sample plugin has stem separation, and there are even some free stem separators online like vocalremover.org. Similar to the chord generator, this technology is at its most basic and results are going to be mixed. For the most part, I've found that the stem separation in FL Studio works on 9 out of 10 things that I've thrown at it. And it does come in useful when I have no track outs for a sample or beat. Another way that you can keep your melodies interesting is with the use of effects and automation. The couple of examples I'm going to show use the Shaperbox and Transit plugins, but this sort of stuff can be done with stock plugins too. If I wanted to add some movement to that layer sound that I added at the beginning of the video, I can just come into Shaperbox and draw a pattern for it. Now the filter is going to follow that shape, giving me this swelling sound. I can then automate the on-off switch of Shaperbox so it only comes on during this build-up. Now inside this Transit plugin, I just want to automate the transition amount. With these third-party plugins, you first want to move the knob that you want to automate. Right-click the multi-link to controllers button, and then click Create Automation Clip. All I need to do now is draw my curve and my transition is complete. Now I saved this last trick until now because it's kind of going to umbrella everything that I just said. Using the A-B structure or the A-B-A-C structure or the A-B-A-C. Yeah, that structure when you always have something changing. It's kind of weird because what you're actually trying to do here is find the perfect balance between repetition and variation. You need things to be just repetitive enough that they're catchy, but with just enough variation that it doesn't get boring. When I'm making melodies, I'll keep instruments in mind that will come in on, let's say, the second 8 bars of a verse. Or I'll be thinking about what drum elements to take out of the bridge section. Sometimes taking things away will add more variation than adding things in, so make sure to keep that in mind too. What I tend to do is make a 16-bar loop with everything in, and this usually turns out to be my hook. I'll then just split that out by channel and take things away to make my verse and bridge sections. But this is just the way that I work, so if you've got any tips that you'd like people to hear, then feel free to leave them in the comments. I've left a couple of videos there on the screen in case you're looking for anything else to watch. Thank you all for watching, and I'll hopefully catch you in the next one.